right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Saturday Night, the true-ish story of the night that the first episode of Saturday Night Live was recorded. This is from director Jason Reitman, and a great cast recreating this epic moment in television history. And joining me to talk about it, we've got Joe Black returning to the show. We get into a lot of great puzzle pieces on this one. Really fun conversation coming up. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And you have a few more days left if you are listening to this the day that it goes up. I gotta remind you, I have a new album of songs about my pets coming out. The Pup Pups, a boy and his dog and 3 cats and a bear. And the pre-order closes in just a few days. So this might be the last chance I get to actually tell you that if you pre-order it right now, you will get your pet's name included on a special bonus song. Of course, you'll be able to pre-order the album for, a couple more months after that, and then the album will be out December 6th, and then you could, of course, stream it. But if you want your pet's name included on the song, I got to record it sometime, and it's got to get out to the press. I'm getting vinyl made of this album, and that takes a little longer to get, printed up and all that stuff, so I got to get the special pre-order window wrapped up this week so I can record that special bonus song with your pet's name on it. So check it out. It's thepuppups.bandcamp.com. If you want to get your pet's name included on the song, you got to order it this weekend. And there will also be a link in the show notes. So with that said, let's talk about Saturday Night. Live from New York, it's... no... Joe Black is with us to talk about Saturday Night. How's it going, Joe?
You startled me.
Good.
It's going good. This is an early morning podcast for just mixing it up a bit here.
It's Tuesday morning is what it is. I wasn't even planning on doing that until I hit record, and then I was just like, I'm going to just go for it. Joe, I'm happy to have you here. I know how much you love this movie. I was originally going to post, just asking the world of people who, listen to this podcast, anybody want to do this episode? But I know you've seen this movie like 6 times or something at this point, and I was like, I got to just ask Joe first before I put it out there, and you were ready to go, so...
Yeah. Well, it's only 5 times.
Okay.
But I am going to see it again when I'm going to Florida next week to visit my family, and while we're there, we're going to all go see it. So.
Beautiful. Right on.
Yeah.
Well, 6 times is a charm, I guess. But,
Twice the charm.
Yeah, sure. You've been on this podcast so many times, and I can't remember us ever talking about Saturday Night Live. Has that ever come up before? Like, are you a fan of Saturday Night Live in general?
I mean, no. But
No.
I love, my favorite movie of all time is The Blues Brothers. So
sure.
In Wayne's World,
we did that comedy sequels episode, so I'm sure we probably talked about something, related in some way. But yeah, we never really talked about the show itself before, and I'm also not really a big fan. I love that era of Mike Myers, Dana Carvey,
Right.
all those guys. That era, that's of course when I was the perfect age to love it, and I don't exactly have the reverence for this era that the movie is about, and I don't watch it anymore in the past 15 years or whatever, but everybody just seems to, like the era of it that they like.
Yeah, that era that you're talking about, the Mike Myers, Adam Sandler era, I would watch that during the summer when I would have to stay at home. That would play in the middle of the day on Comedy Central. They would do a double block of Saturday Night Live reruns. And that's the majority of my Saturday Night Live watching, is 8 years old watching reruns of it, in the afternoon.
Sure.
But I do like most of, if not all of, the Saturday Night Live movies. I even like It's Pat. I think It's Pat is pretty funny.
I'm sure I saw it when it came out. I don't not recall much of it, but
yeah. But and I mean, they've given us some of the greats, you know what I mean? But the format of the show itself, I think, is a little dated. And I do remember almost 20 years ago, I got the Saturday Night Live season 1 DVD just out of curiosity. And halfway through the first episode, I was like, oh boy, this is rough. You know what I mean? I also just don't like George Carlin's stand-up. I think he was just an asshole.
Oh, oh, oh.
But
Where are we
I
going with this?
I know I like him as an actor, but I don't like him as a stand-up. I think he was just a whiner. And so like the fact that he had like 3 routines throughout the whole first episode, I don't know. I just didn't get it.
I do think Matthew Reyes is a inspired choice for Carlin in this movie, but
He's brilliant.
it's so good. But yeah, I think we're gonna have a lot of different and interesting things to get into with this episode. So let's just get into some puzzle pieces here. What do you have for your first puzzle piece for Saturday Night?
The first one I have is a stupid and futile gesture.
Mm-hmm.
The
A futile and stupid gesture, right?
futile and stupid, is it that?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
well, it's a stupid and futile title. Yeah, about the National Lampoon guys, directed by one of our favorites, David Wayne.
Sure.
A movie I wanted to love, but I had to admit, halfway through, it's like, no, this isn't working in the way
Yeah.
that they want it to. And good for David Wayne for trying to pull that into his kind of universe. Like doing a straightforward biopic, but then adding his kind of weird meta fourth wall breaking
Sure.
humor to it. It just didn't work. And then they also try to do that thing where, like, we all know that he killed himself or fell off of a cliff,
Mm-hmm.
but they had Martin Mull like narrating the movie as him like in his 70s, which was very weird.
Very
Um,
strange choice. Yeah.
so I get it. I get that they were trying to like throw you a curveball, but like again, I just don't think it worked. And I also like that in that movie, they didn't really. It was almost like they were intentionally trying to cast people to play like famous actors who look nothing like them.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like that was kind of like the goof of it, And so like the spirit of that movie was right. You know what I mean, and fit right in with National Lampoon, but the movie just didn't work as a whole. And I think that this movie similarly is about like what if like the spirit of the show Saturday Night Live was how the real world functioned.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like they treat like a lot of the skits that they're rehearsing in this, for example, like the Dan Aykroyd scene where he's wearing the short shorts.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're treating it like Dan Aykroyd himself was that uncomfortable and was that, and like that the dialogue actually had like deeper meaning for the real characters in the movie, but it's just the sketch.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
sketch is, you know what I mean? Dan Aykroyd's character is like that in the actual sketch.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the key moment to this movie. I was like, oh, they're not going for reality with this movie. They're
Right.
going for like the spirit of Saturday Night Live as reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the thing that I like the most about it is that it is kind of just American myth making in a way. And it's like just selling the idea that this is how it all really was because this is what came off the TV and this is what everybody has watched in reruns for the last 40 years. Yeah, I mean, A Futile and Stupid Gesture was one that I was thinking of too, of course, as a big David Wayne fan. And they're both just such tall tasks to try to recreate or even cast these just giants of comedy and these people who we all grew up with and it's kind of an uphill battle for any director to try to even do that, but I do think that we have a much better cast here with Saturday Night, and that is part of the reason why it all kind of works better. And like you said, there's some very strange choices made by David Wayne in the Futile and Stupid Gesture, but yeah, I think that's definitely one to kick this off with. And I will go for my first piece, a combination of two television shows that deal with a fictional version of the same kind of idea, and that is 30 Rock and Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, both that try to capture that insanity of a live weekly sketch show and what it's like behind the scenes, what these larger than life personalities are like. I never actually watched Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. I always kind of wanted to. Yeah, I don't think anybody did. Yeah. But 30 Rock is one of my favorite shows of all time. And, but, by all accounts, though, they both are playing in that same space of like the sketch variety show. And these people are just as insane as, their characters on the show. And that kind of fits right in with A Futile and Stupid Gesture, I think.
Yeah, I missed the 30 Rock train for a handful of reasons. If you remember at the time, it was almost like a Star Wars versus Star Trek of what did you like better, 30 Rock or The Office? Like those were like the two, and I was Team Office.
Mhm.
And I also just really don't like Tina Fey.
Mhm.
I just
I didn't like Tina Fey until I finally bought into 30 Rock. I
mm.
resisted it for a long time.
Well, Tracy Morgan, though, I mean, he's reason enough to get me to see anything.
So good.
So I'm sure that one of these days I'll fall into the 30 Rock rabbit hole. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch Cop Out 55 times, I can watch a season of 30 Rock
Yeah. Yeah.
just to mix it up some. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's funny. 30 Rock itself kind of became a cultural landmark as well, and now is talked about just as much as Saturday Night Live in its own way, which is,
Yeah.
that's pretty impressive.
It really is. It absolutely is. And I mean, that creative team has gone on Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and they've done like two other shows since then. They've got their their style, and they continue to put stuff out in that style. And 30 Rock's still the best, though, I think. But
Mm.
let's go on to another piece. What do you got next?
Okay, the next one that I have is Steve Jobs,
Okay.
the Aaron Sorkin penned
Mm-hmm.
uh Steve Job biopic where it was three different like if it like the structure of that movie is it's broken up into three parts, and each part is like the 30 minutes leading up to him launching some new product,
Sure.
and kind of it has that like kind of rapid fire kind of energy to it. And it also has like it plays with like this movie. I actually got to see a screening of it with Jason Reitman and most of the cast talking afterward. And
Mm-hmm.
Jason Reitman was talking about shooting the film on 16 millimeter, and also like how they designed the set. Um, the production design of the set was so that everything was built into the set so they could shoot 360. So
Okay.
like the lighting, the rigging, the crew, all of that was designed into the set so that they could just shoot wherever, whenever they wanted. You know what I mean? To
Mm.
create that kind of seamless kind of energy. And
Yeah.
I feel like opposite of Steve Jobs, I really thought the Steve Jobs movie was pretty terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because at the end of the Steve Jobs movie, they have Steve Jobs who's been like on this train the whole movie of like the product is what matters most, the innovation is what matters most. And then in the end he delays the iPod launch to go talk to his daughter,
Right. Right.
like who's upset. And I remember watching that being like, what the fuck is like, like what are you
Yeah.
talking about? And then afterward, reading an article where Aaron Sorkin was like, I had to make up that ending because I just hated Steve Jobs so much that unless I had made up that ending, I wouldn't have wanted to do the movie. And I was like, then don't do the fucking movie. Like the hell's wrong with you, you know? And
Yeah.
and I think that again, conversely, I think that Jason Reitman has such a love and affection for these people, especially for Dan Aykroyd, like that,
Yeah.
that that's obviously why he made this movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He made it because he loves these people as
It
opposed to
really
Steve,
shows. Yeah.
right? As opposed to Steve Jobs, which very clearly from minute one is about how he hates Steve Jobs. And it's like, I just don't like things that are made in bad faith, you
Mhm.
know? So I actually much preferred the Ashton Kutcher Jobs movie.
Yeah. I figured you'd say that, but
That movie was very profound for me, actually. Like, and I asked my friends, I took my friends to go see it because I had seen it a couple times. I took them to see it. I was like, why do I like this movie so much? Like, why? And
Mhm.
my friends are like, because he's playing you. Like, and I was like, oh, like, because like I was like, oh, I guess Steve Jobs is like a real asshole who expects people to do. Maybe I should. And honestly, that like I had to go inside myself and like figure myself out at how to better communicate and not be that much like Ashton
Yeah.
Kutcher Steve Jobs does by the
Don't
end of
the
that
best
movie.
movies always do that, including Jobs, the Ashton Kutcher Steve Jobs movie?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the best movies and Jobs.
Yes, sure.
But
Yeah,
no,
there you go.
but that movie too. Like, it's always so tough when you have people playing people who really existed. And
Mhm.
I think about Kate Winslet in Steve Jobs and just how inconsistent her accent is in that movie, and
Mm.
how like she never seems to age over like the 30 year or the 15 years that it's set and all that. And in this movie, I what I like too is that none of these people are trying to do an impression of the person they're playing. They're just
Mm.
trying to like embody the spirit of that
Right.
person, which
Yeah.
is always the right move. You know what I mean? It's and it's funny, the day before I saw this movie, I was talking with my buddy about like who of the new crop of actors is interesting or exciting, and we couldn't come up with anybody. We're like, Timothy Chalamet, no. Like
Mm.
Florence Pugh, no. Like none of these people are like exciting, you know what I mean? And then I watched this movie and I'm like, oh, all of those people,
Right, right.
like
Yeah,
all
it's
of these
such a good
people,
cast.
yeah,
Yeah.
these people are terrific. And funny enough, what's Shiva Baby's name?
Rachel Sennott.
Rachel Sennott, arguably the most famous of the
I
cast.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, outside of like Willem Dafoe and whatever, but like
Sure.
she, funny enough, to me was the weakest.
Hmm.
Like she seemed a little out of her element in this movie. Um, she didn't ruin it or even hurt it even, but like everyone else seemed so like fluid and in the body of this character. Not that I even know really anything about the woman that Rachel Sennett played, but Rachel Sennett showed more to me than the character.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that partially does have to do with the fact that it's such a young cast of people that we don't really know, and yet we know her personality.
Sure.
And I think her personality does show in this character. Maybe that's part of the reason why they cast her as this character. I also don't know anything about the real Rosie Schuster, so it's kind of hard to say. But she's definitely of the young cast. She's the most kind of out there versus actually just being these characters.
They told a story about Rosie at the premiere of this movie. They were talking about at the premiere. Apparently, at one point, she just leaned over to Rachel Sennett and said, "How funny would it be if I just died of a heart attack right now?"
That's pretty good.
I know. I was like, "That's cool."
Yeah.
She sounds like a cool lady.
Well, I'm gonna go. Speaking of like with your Steve Jobs piece, movies that kind of lead right up until the big moment. I'm gonna go with The Disaster Artist, the story of Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero making The Room. All these actors that have to kind of do impressions of these like very larger than life characters, and it all kind of comes to a head at the moment when the premiere of The Room happens, and then the rest is history. And it kind of has that feature not a bug thing of we know how it's going to end. We know that even though this movie is going to be a disaster, The Room, everybody's going to love it and it's going to become this big cult classic. And with Saturday Night Live, we know that the show is going to go off and it's going to be around for another 50 years and just keep going and going and going. So we know that going in, but it's fine because it's still just such a fun ride to see that kind of creation of that first moment. And I think The Disaster Artist kind of has some of the similar flaws that we're talking about with the Steve Jobs movie of the kind of mix of cast and whatnot, and who works and who doesn't, and who kind of comes through as actually doing a great job of embodying these characters, and who is just like, oh, there's that actor. But still
Seth
has a
Rogen.
similar. Yeah, exactly. But still, it's fun for what it is.
Yeah, I actually think The Disaster Artist is a masterpiece. And I have two things off of what you're saying there that are interesting. I mean, I talked to you about this about like the whole idea of Saturday Night Live. We know for a fact that it's going to happen. Like we know that
Hmm.
it. And I compared it to rom coms and
Yeah.
how like a bad rom com is like, will they or won't they end up together? Oh, like of
Hmm.
course they will. It's a rom com. But I said that a good rom com gets us, the audience, to be like, these two have to get together.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's what this movie is. It's not about will they or won't they, go to air. It's about like we have to be rooting for them
Right.
to go to air by the
We have
end
to
of it.
get caught up in that energy and that
Right.
excitement.
And
Yeah.
somebody who doesn't give two shits about Saturday Night Live by the end when he says the Live from New York is Saturday Night, I was like fist pumping. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
like you did
Yeah,
it.
there was actually a lady sitting like 3 seats over from me that applauded at that moment, and I was like, "Hell yeah, this is
Yeah,
great."
how can you not if you're into the spirit of the movie, how can you not? You know what I mean? And again, but see, we're getting into what makes this movie actually kind of brilliant. How like Willem Dafoe's character is not like a villain.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? He's a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And same thing with like the stakes are kind of like low, if you will. They don't try to milk this for the drama of will they or won't they? Because like everyone's saying to him, look, let's just do it next week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, let's just go, like, it's not like it's not that phony, like, buildup of, like, this is my one shot. If we fail, then we're not, that's bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not on
Yeah.
this movie's mind. This movie is a celebration of the creative spirit. And
Mhm.
to the disaster artist, though, um, one thing that I've always pointed out about that movie is how that movie, what makes the movie brilliant is that it's all done in good faith. There's not a
Mhm.
drop of condescension in that movie. And I hate my least favorite movie of all time is Ed Wood,
Mm.
the Tim Burton movie. And
Mm.
and I'm not saying it's a bad movie. Of course it's not a bad movie. I just
Sure.
hate it because it's so there's a condescension to that movie. It's like, we love this guy. Wasn't he the worst?
Right.
Like that's kind of the attitude of it. He was so passionate about making this crap. That's awesome. And
Mhm.
I'm sorry, but like Ed Wood was actually a visionary and a genius, and his talent maybe didn't live up to that, but like still, and he
Right.
was, but the Disaster Artist, what was so great about that is that they start the movie off with interviews with celebrities, like documentary style interviews with celebrities talking about how, like, yeah, like we're still talking about this movie. I remember the first time I saw this movie.
Yeah.
Then when we get into the narrative of it, the first thing we see is Greg kind of bombing on stage. He sits down and then he watches fucking Tommy get up on stage and just be completely free,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
unashamed, free, and it's inspiring to him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
starting off the movie through that perspective, that like,
Mhm.
wow, this guy is so unafraid to be himself.
Yeah.
How incredible is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that again, that makes all the difference. Just like this Saturday Night Live not being about like, oh, if we don't do this, then we're all going back to, open mics at blah blah blah. Like, the fact that they don't play those fucking games with us
Yeah.
is, I mean, that's something to celebrate. To me, that's the future of movies.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's go to another piece. What do you got next?
Meet the Feebles.
Okay.
Um,
Yes.
I Meet the Feebles. I'm just waiting for the day for that 4K release.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
God, if I could go to Peter Jackson and hold him at gunpoint to get him to finish it, I would.
Yeah.
Just like, hurry faster. Um, I actually got to see that movie for the first time on film when I was in my teens.
Nice.
I know it's an experience that I am forever grateful for. But yeah, Meet the Feebles. It's a backstage drama about a Muppet type show.
Mhm.
Yeah, Peter Jackson's second movie, still his best movie in my opinion. Fuck Return of the King.
Mm.
Um, it's all puppets, and it's the most like grotesque, foul, gnarly, violent, and not just violent in like blood and guts, but violent in its like attitude.
Sure.
But it
Sure.
has this manic, like, nonstop energy that
Sure.
like like if you step off the train for 1 second, it's going to leave you behind.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like Saturday Night has the same thing, and also like mixing in like the rehearsals of the skits as a way to like propel the story forward, almost like musical numbers in a way, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I feel like they both these movies have a very similar like, propulsive kind of chaos and energy, and ultimately are about like the creative lame, but creative spirit. Like this movie isn't about like what it was really like the night of Saturday Night's first airing. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's about the creative energy. It's about getting swept up in the romance, like
Yeah.
Gilda Radner in the movie says. Like, like, have you ever been nostalgic for a moment as it's happening?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
this movie. And I actually, during that scene, the first time I saw it, during that scene, before she even said it, I had that sentiment in my head. Like,
Yeah.
I had that sentiment, like, man, like what it would have been like to have been there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And of course, in the fantasy world of, John Belushi in a bee suit,
Yeah.
skating. That guy, by the way, where did they find this guy?
You know, it's funny actually that you say that. I went to Wikipedia to write down the cast list. He's the only one without a blue link under his name. He doesn't
Really?
have a Wikipedia page. Yeah.
My dream, and I shouted this from my seats when Jason Reitman was there. My dream would be for them to make a sequel to this movie,
Mhm.
um, about the making of the Blues Brothers.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
sure.
um, I'm available to play John Landis.
Uh-huh.
I
I'm
might be
sure
a little
Dan
too.
Aykroyd's dream is that too, but,
Hey,
yeah.
that's funny. I would love a Blues Brothers 3 too. If they called it Blues Brothers 3000,
Uh-huh.
whoo, whoo. Um, But yeah, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, Blues Brothers is my favorite movie, and the story of the making of the Blues Brothers is incredible. There's this whole book about it. It's pretty amazing and a lot of fun. And this guy playing Belushi not only nailed like the look and attitude, but when he's doing the recreations of these skits, it's like whoa, like how
Yeah.
did you like nail it? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
He's really good.
he's
He's really
amazing.
good.
He's maybe the best one in the whole movie. Like,
Yeah.
although I for me, after seeing it 5 times now, Cooper Hoffman steals the movie for me.
Cooper Hoffman is so good, and me and Joe talked about Licorice Pizza on this podcast back when it came out, and it's so great to see him get another meaty role where he just kills this movie. I think he is so good in this.
He does his father's little hand gesture too.
He does.
That
He
one
absolutely
where he puts his
does.
hand forward while he's talking. But
Yeah.
but I'll say when I saw Licorice Pizza, I loved it. You know, I still do. It's probably my second favorite PTA movie. He's very good in it. Like he's
Mhm.
so good, but he's obviously green.
Right.
But
Sure.
that's part of the charm of it, you know, of his
Right.
performance. He's good and green. This, he's made a quantum leap in 3 years. You can really tell that he's been studying, practicing, like, you know what I mean? Like he is seamless in this movie. And I
Yeah.
I really hope that he keeps getting cast because man, he's wonderful. That moment at the end too where he's got I have a camera.
Yeah.
Like,
So
oh,
good.
I
So
almost stood
good.
to my feet and applauded when that happened. Like,
So good.
yeah.
While we're talking about cast, just for a second, Lamorne Morris as Garrett Morris. He's also fantastic. One of my favorites on the cast.
I think my wife has a big crush on him now after that movie and after the
Nice.
little Q&A with him. He's brilliant, and apparently he's the only person who talked with the person he was playing before they made the movie.
Hmm.
Jason Reitman had asked people not to do that,
Huh.
and
Okay.
when Jason Reitman was talking about that at the Q&A, he kinda made a face like, "Ooh," you know, like, "Whoops." But he did. He got to know Garrett Morris before playing the part, and, yeah, he's absolutely brilliant in it, and his, "Give me a shotgun, kill all the whiteys I see," like,
Yeah. So
oh,
good.
brings the house down. Like,
Love it.
it's yeah, again, you're either into the spirit of this movie or you're not. I know that as I was walking out of the theater the last time I saw it with Jack Black, I was, well, Jack Black said he was gonna go see it, so I was like, "I should go see it again too." So I
Yeah.
did, and he was there and I was there and whatever. But
Nice.
as we were leaving, uh, there was this group of guys talking about like, typical biopic and like, do they really expect us to believe this is how it happened? And like, blah, blah, blah.
Ugh.
And I'm like, dude, like, come on. You know what I mean? Like, did you just watch that movie? Like, very obviously, it's what you're saying. You know, it's American myth making. It's not at all trying to be a biopic or like
Yeah.
no, it's definitely about something else. The spirit of it is so evident that you need to just be honest with yourself and either you're into it or you're not, but it doesn't mean that
Hmm.
the movie's quality varies whether you're into it or not. Like the movie is
Yeah.
great, you
I'm
know?
I'm I'm with you on this one, Joe. I will go for my next piece. You were talking about the skits almost feeling like musical performances, and I actually wanted to talk about the musical performances here. The Billy Preston as the opening, performer on the first episode. That him being played by John Batiste, who does the score, which is a very propulsive score that's just constantly through this whole movie and helping that manic energy go. I'm pretty sure you don't like Birdman, Joe.
No, of course not.
Yeah, I knew that's one that you don't like, but I'm bringing up Birdman because first of all, the energy of it all, but second of all, that exact thing, the idea that you see that drummer every so often playing along to the beat of the movie and that just constant percussive energy. And then we actually see Billy Preston playing in the movie, which is again the film's composer. So I just love that about it. And I mean, you could also, of course, go to some of that backstage anxiety and the is all of this going to fall apart at any moment? There's a lot of other ways you can go into Birdman, but I wanted to focus mainly on the score and how ever present it is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, and the only good thing about Birdman is the score. Apparently, Batiste performed the score for the movie live on set.
Oh, that's so
At
cool.
the end of every day, like they would do a live performance of like a new score. They would be working on it all day during like in between takes, and then they would perform it at the end of the day, and they'd record it, and that's what they put into the movie.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and yeah, I wasn't gonna bring up Birdman, A, because it's a piece of shit, and B, because I figured you would.
Yeah, sure.
Not because it's a piece of shit, but because like of course it's gonna get brought up, and I don't have to
Yeah,
bring up that piece of shit. I don't have to be the one to do it because
fair.
it very obviously is inspired. Like it's
Yeah.
probably the main puzzle piece.
I think so. And I think that there's probably at some point in the development of this movie a version that was meant to look like a one take.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, God, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Um, But see, that's the problem with Birdman is that, and against what I've been talking about. First of all, it comes from a place of bad faith. Like it's really just like a shitty perspective on
Mm,
creating something and coming together to create something. It's also like I watch that and think to myself, has this person who made this ever like worked on a play before? Like, what actor would want to work with this guy after seeing how he thinks of actors?
mm,
And
mm,
and also, it's just a fucking wannabe of Opening Night, the John
mm,
Cassavetes movie. And I
mm.
remember seeing it on Opening Night and thinking, like, you can't do that. You can't just like rip off another movie that blatantly.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And um, but also, it's funny. You and I were talking right before we started recording. Foxcatcher, like
Mhm.
I saw Foxcatcher. Or I watched Foxcatcher last night. Saw it when it came out. But Birdman is the movie that won Best Picture that year.
Yeah,
That,
yeah,
like, Foxcatcher wasn't even nominated, and I was just like, "Really?
yeah,
You really? Like, no room for Foxcatcher at the Birdman table, I guess. Like, what the fuck?"
yeah.
But again, it's just this bad faith, ugly, cynical take on things, and it was nothing but a gimmick. Like, once they try to do the one take, like I said, once you pan up to a digital sky and do, like, a 12-hour time lapse and back down, I'm like, "You okay, it's over." Like, your gimmick is over.
Mhm.
Why? Did you like Birdman or what?
I love Birdman.
Really?
It's a wild ride, and the cynicism doesn't bother me. So,
Ah,
yeah,
you play cynic, but, like, if you really believed in all that shit, you wouldn't have created this great podcast and the great
Ah,
community you've
thank you.
created on Facebook. You're
Thank
just
you, Joe.
well, one day you're gonna be like, "Alright, I'm done pretending." You know what I mean? Like like, eh,
Yeah.
I mean, adaptation is good, you're right, but the rest of
Nah.
Charlie Kaufman's filmography is, for children.
Oh, now we got battle going on here. Joe, what's your next puzzle piece?
I mean, you stumped me, that was it. I only
Okay.
had I really did, I only had a few there, because, I mean, what am I gonna say? Saturday Night Live season 1, episode 1? But,
I
no,
mean, the only other thing I had was broadcast news, so
yeah,
you
well, of
wanna
course. I mean, you can't be in a
yeah,
fucking, in a control room like that and not think of
yeah.
the funniest moment maybe in all of '80s cinema where those guys performed the new intro for the news. They ba 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 da da, and then at the end of it, the guy just goes, "Chills. I got chills." It's
It's
yeah,
great.
and
Absolutely great.
what's his name? Robert Wool being in this too. Like he showed up
Oh, yeah, yeah.
for the Q&A afterward, and I was like, I was freaking out. I was like, that's Knox from Batman, and I have like the Batman tattoo,
Oh, nice, nice.
But yeah, the control booth stuff is really good.
Yeah. I think there's also you can point to the central relationship between Lorne Michaels and Rosie, that kind of anxiety between people
Mhm.
in show business and all of their outside factors kind of screwing with their relationship basically.
What are we? Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I like when I see broadcast news, like broadcast news to me is like that to me is like the pinnacle of Hollywood movies, where it's like
Mhm.
it's such a movie, but it's actually just so deep and so rich. And unlike Terms of Endearment, which I think is amazing as well, it doesn't have to go there, if you will, to get
Mm.
you to feel something. Like the moment where Jack Nicholson and William Hurt shake hands is like where he's literally shaking hands with the devil. It's just like,
Yeah.
wow, like your grandma can understand what this movie's about. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I mean that
Sure.
in the best way. And I was in high school when I saw that movie, and I was going through a similar uh I was the Albert Brooks in a love triangle of sorts, you know what I mean? And like I
Uh-huh.
remember thinking like, wow, like this movie is tapping into what I'm going through right now at 17 years old.
Mm.
You know what I mean? But it's about news. I like that was and that's why I like that movie a lot and not Network. I know when I said that last week at the
Yeah.
Joker podcast and Jason Ayers was like, "What?" Like, yeah, I find Network to be kind of lame and obvious. It's a movie that like all of its satire is like Family Guy level. All of its drama is, year 1 of theater school drama, like
Mhm.
and its performances are stilted in a not very interesting way, but broadcast news is saying all the same shit, getting to the same point if not in a better communicative way because it's actually speaking to the middle class Americans who watch the news, but it also injects humanity into it, the kind of humanity that we all want to experience in life versus
Mm.
networks, metropolitan version of humanity. And
Metropolitan version. That's a good way to put it. I'm not going to agree with you on network,
of
but
course, no one does.
I agree with everything you said about broadcast news, though. It's just so damn good, and that's why I wanted to include it on the list. I'll read down the final puzzle list here, and then we'll get into some closing thoughts. We talked about A Futile and Stupid Gesture, 30 Rock, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, Steve Jobs, The Disaster Artist, Meet the Feebles, Birdman, and Broadcast News. I think we got into exactly the right stuff here for a movie like this. Like, it is a very specific thing about a very specific night. I mean, it's all kind of right there. Its influences, I think, are just like right on the screen.
Jason Reitman's always been like that, though, and I mean that in a good way. Like, every movie of his you see, you're like, "Oh, so he's been watching a lot of Altman lately,"
Mm-hmm.
or you know what I mean? Like, that is kind of his MO, and but I don't mean that in a bad way. It's funny, I used to know him a little bit because he used to come into the theater I worked at, like, once a week, and we would talk
Mm-hmm.
about his movies, and, Labor Day and Men, Women, and Children were the first 2 movies he did that I really loved.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me at one point, he's like, I'm going to call you Neo because you're the one person who liked those movies.
Yeah,
Um,
I was gonna say.
but and I remember telling him after Frontman came out, which I liked. I told him that like I really appreciate his movies more than I like them.
Mm.
Like cuz there's always been like a stilted kind of thing that's off about them. You know, him trying too hard to be Hollywood. Or not
Mm-hmm.
trying too hard to be Hollywood, him too afraid of steering too far away from Hollywood. And that's probably cuz he grew up, in the, with his father and, in the
Sure.
commercial world of Hollywood. So like that makes sense. And his last movie, Ghostbusters Afterlife, I was like, that's the best Jason Reitman movie. Because
Mm.
what he did was he injected who he was into a Hollywood movie instead of injecting Hollywood movies into who he is.
Mm.
Like he kind of flipped it and it worked perfectly for me. I know you weren't crazy about that one, but
Meh. Yeah.
this one, I was like, "Oh man, he did it even better this time." You know what I mean? Like he really leveled up. And to me, what makes this movie so special, it's not the propulsive energy, it's not the great cast, it's none of these things. What makes the movie so great is what the movie is about. The movie is about creative responsibility. If Lorne
Mm.
Michaels, the character, we're only talking about the characters. I don't know Lorne Michaels, but if
Sure.
Lorne Michaels wants to be the leader of this ship, if he wants to be the guy to shepherd and look out for these artists, then he has to know why.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're an artist, you go with your gut. Like that's like something to say. You just got to go with your gut. You got to go. But to be the leader of a team, to be a director, let alone of something as big as Saturday Night, you it's actually your job to know why.
Yeah.
It's your job to understand. And that's why it drives me fucking nuts when I see movies where like Joker Folie à Deux, where the director obviously doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Like he
Mm-hmm.
has an idea, you know what I mean? And it maybe even is a good idea, but he doesn't fully understand what it is he's making or why
Right.
he's using that shot or why he's using that song or why. And that's what this movie is. It's laying down the gauntlet to Lorne Michaels and all of the actors. Like every character's arc in this is like, why are you here?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And here's the thing, when you can clearly define the why, that's when you elevate from just being like an artist or an anarchist or a punk or a cynic or, when you actually can understand the why, that's what makes you a revolutionary. And
Mm.
so even though we can watch Saturday Night Live now, like the originals, and be like, what the fuck is this? This is weird and not funny at all. Those people so fully understood what it was they were doing and why that 50 years later, we're still talking about them. And even
Yeah.
outside of this movie, it's not like this movie reinvigorated people's like love for Dan Aykroyd. No, like
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And I really love that to me is what this movie was about. This movie was about the difference between being like an artist and being I don't know, being a performer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, I think we got into a lot of really great stuff here, and we did talk a lot about the cast, which is, like we said, just all great. So I think that's a good place to wrap up Saturday night. Joe, is there another movie you watched recently you want to recommend to our listeners?
yeah, I just mentioned it earlier, like, my wife and I, we watched, Foxcatcher
Mm-hmm.
the other night or last night, and man, strike that. I've already talked about Foxcatcher. I'm gonna talk about Never Let Go, the
Oh
Halle
yeah,
Berry
yeah.
movie. That was my favorite movie of the year until this one came out, until Saturday
Wow.
Night came out. That screenplay for Never Let Go, like, that screenplay, if I was a screenwriting teacher, I would bring that into my class to like make everyone read and discuss. Like that script is so brilliant. It's such a bummer that movie didn't made no waves.
No one seems to have liked it. Like, seriously.
Really?
Yeah.
That I didn't know. I thought that just nobody fucking saw it. No,
Nobody saw it, but those who did see it didn't really seem to like
really?
it. So, yeah.
Wow, that's actually surprising to me. You know, I go to this little dirt theater up the road from my house. I call it dirt theater because it's like, kind of shitty. And it's like it used to be second run dollar theater. Now it's $5
Yeah.
for a ticket. But those are the kind of theaters I see movies with my dad in. And I went to go see Never Let Go, and I was the only person in the theater.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And that movie blew me away.
Yeah.
Floored me. And yeah, I think it's a real bummer. Alexandra Aja is a very underrated director. And
Oh, yeah. I like him, and that's why I still want to give it a chance between his
Please do.
involvement and your recommendation. I
Yeah.
still want to give it a chance when I get a chance to go see it. But yeah, I liked most, if not everything, I've seen from him. Really.
Yeah, same. I didn't see the one with Shoshana from Inglourious Basterds where she's like in that like box because
Yeah, I like that.
not because but it's not because the premise seemed. I'm claustrophobic and I'm like I don't need to. You know what I mean?
Could live
Like,
without that one.
yeah, but like I even liked Mirrors with
Mhm.
Kiefer Sutherland. Like these are good movies. He's a
Yeah.
solid director, and yeah, this movie it really did. It impressed me, and it was the first time in a few months that I had been in a theater and felt like I was watching a movie.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like
Nice.
I was like, yeah, now that's called cinematography. That's
Mm,
called acting. That's called writing. That's called a twist,
nice.
And the score
Nice.
is good. So
Right on. Right on. Well, Joe, where can people find you and your films and everything you're up to?
well, you can find us at Blue Means Pregnant Films on Facebook and bluemeanspregnantfilms.com. We also, our newest film, I Don't Know, is playing at the Treasure Coast International Film Festival this weekend, October 19th, 4 p.m. Come check it out if you're in Port St. Lucie, Florida.
Mhm.
But hopefully that'll be coming out soon too, as well as we've got a back catalog of about 15 movies, and a handful of those we're actually discussing will be coming out like proper next year. So
Right on. Right
yeah.
on. Well, we will put a link in the show notes for all that. And Joe, as always, great having you here. Look forward to getting you back.
You're the best.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Saturday Night. Thank you so much to Joe Black for joining me on that one, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed wherever it is that you listen. Maybe drop us a little 5-star rating or review. That would help make sure that more people check out the show. You could follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. Also, don't forget that we do have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content for piecing it together, awesome movie year, and from my music career. Lots of great stuff over there at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. You can sign up for as little as $3 a month and get access to all of that bonus stuff. So check it out and support the show. So I told you at the top that I do have that new The Pup Pups album coming out. And we're trying to get those last pre-orders in before I wrap up the bonus song. So I might as well give you a little taste so you can see what you're pre-ordering when you go to thepuppups.bandcamp.com. This is a song about how my dog Harvey barks at me all day for treats, usually interrupting these podcast recordings. It's called Why You Be Barking at Yo Daddy. So I hope you enjoy the song. We'll be back with more piecing it together real soon.
Well, he's a mean little doggy and he barks at his dad. He's a crazy little doggy and he barks at his dad. He's a baby little doggy and he barks at his dad. Why you be barking at your daddy? Gave him time to play. I gave him anything he wanted anytime. appetite. Well, I do a little dance and maybe make a couple bucks. I can't get them for myself, so tell me, Daddy, what you want. You can put them in my bowl or you can put them on the floor. Already gave me a couple kibble, but I want a couple more. If you run out of that kibble, better run to the store, because I want more and more. Mean little doggy and he barks at his dad. He's a crazy little doggy and he barks at his dad. He's a baby little doggy and he barks at his dad. Why you be barking at your daddy?
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.